My parents evicted me for choosing a job over babysitting their kids. My parents threw me out when I took a job instead of continuing to babysit their children. Weeks later, their seemingly perfect world unraveled as I revealed their deceit. They cut me off after I started working, unable to watch their kids anymore, and then lied to our family about the situation. So I went all out and exposed their falsehoods. Now, they're trying to pull me back because their new babysitter walked out. I landed my first job 2 months after turning 17. When I shared the news with my parents, their immediate response was, "Who's going to look after our kids?" I wasn't shocked, knowing their mindset. So I countered, "Who's going to cover my college tuition?" I thought I'd cornered them, especially since they'd previously told me I'd need to fund college myself. Instead, they laughed as if my question was absurd. "You're a woman, and women should be thankful for the chance to care for kids, paid or not," they said. Of course, for me, it was unpaid. My dad chimed in with his wisdom. "You can't just be selfish and ditch the family. Julia, do you know how much a babysitter for 4 kids costs these days?" I offered a compromise, suggesting I could contribute some of my earnings to them and the kids, but they dismissed it. They believed that because I wasn't devoting my life to their children, I deserved to be kicked out. They told me to pack my things and leave. I rolled my eyes, but for the first time in ages, I let myself feel the pain. The sadness, the betrayal, and the grief of knowing I'd never experience a life where my parents truly loved me. I didn't bother wiping my tears, focusing instead on stuffing as many clothes as I could into a backpack. 10 minutes later, they shouted for me to hurry up, and we left for my cousin's place. On the drive, my parents tried to guilt-trip me into reconsidering. My dad mentioned how much my brothers loved me, emphasizing how only I could calm them when they cried. Their manipulation was clumsy, but it still made me question if I was being selfish. My mom even started crying, not because she missed me, but because they now faced babysitting costs. When we reached my cousin Susan's house, and they drove off without a goodbye, guilt hit me harder, especially when Susan opened the door with a warm, genuine smile, the first I'd seen in a while. Her kindness felt so unfamiliar that I broke down in tears as soon as we stepped inside. She tried to comfort me, saying, "Why don't you just help your parents a bit?" That stung. I'd sacrificed friendships, let my grades slip, and given up everything to care for their kids. Furious, I snapped, "Help. I've given up everything." Susan looked genuinely shocked. "Your parents said you were acting entitled, refusing to pitch in when you had nothing else to do." I sobbed again, this time in her arms, and told her the full truth about why I ended up at her place. She held me, promising I'd be safe with her. Surprisingly, she wasn't just angry, she was livid. I cried myself to sleep that afternoon. I woke hours later to Susan's furious voice in the next room. She was on the phone with my parents, and though I couldn't make out her words, her rage was clear. Susan, usually quiet and reserved, was letting them have it. For the first time, someone was standing up for me, and I felt a genuine smile creep across my face. When she hung up, I pretended to be asleep. Without realizing I was awake, she spoke aloud, something she hadn't done since I was a kid. Her words made me sit up. My parents had already lined up a new free babysitter. The whole ordeal was a setup to push me out of their lives for good. Susan sighed, saying I deserved better, then went to bed. That's when I realized she was right. I deserved better parents. If I couldn't have that, I'd at least get some justice. Every family has a gossipy aunt, and ours was no exception. I texted Aunt Julia a 1,400-word message detailing everything that happened. Scared of the fallout, I turned off my phone. The next morning, when I finally powered it back on, I was overwhelmed. Notifications flooded in, not just from Aunt Julia, but from nearly every family member I had contact info for. She'd forwarded my message to the entire family group chat. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the responses. Some defended my parents, calling me a dramatic teen, but many supported me. Uncle Joseph wrote a lengthy message, furious at his sister, my mom, for treating me like a live-in nanny instead of a daughter. Grandma Elizabeth expressed heartbreak, saying she'd raised her kids better than this. Susan came into the guest room where I was staying, holding her phone. "Are you kidding?" she grumbled. "Julia thrives on this drama, but honestly, maybe it's good everyone knows." I wasn't sure. It felt great to be believed, but I knew my parents would be furious, and I still had to figure out my next steps. I had a job but no permanent home, and I was still in high school. I missed my siblings terribly. Then my phone rang, my dad. My hands shook, but I knew I had to face him eventually. I answered, bracing for the explosion. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted, so loud I pulled the phone away. Susan overheard and her eyes widened. He called me ungrateful, said I'd humiliated them in front of the family, and told me I was dead to him, never welcome back. Tears welled up as I listened. When he finally paused, I mumbled, "I didn't mean for Aunt Julia to tell everyone." "You stupid, ungrateful," he started, but my mom grabbed the phone. Her voice was cold. "Julia, you've made your choice. Don't expect any support from us. Not for college, not for your phone bill, nothing." My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about practicalities like the family phone plan or college costs. "What about my stuff?" I asked softly. "You took what you needed," she replied. "Anything left we'll donate by the weekend." The call ended abruptly. Susan hugged me, trying to lighten the mood. Well, that sounded pleasant. She promised we'd retrieve my things the next day while my parents were at work. The following day, Susan took a sick day, and we drove to my parents' house. I still had a key, so we entered easily. The house was quiet. My parents were at work, siblings at school or daycare. It felt surreal, like I was sneaking in rather than returning home. I went to my room, packing books, clothes, my laptop, and photos of my siblings. Susan was in my parents' office, emerging with a folder under her arm. When I asked what it was, she shrugged, saying she'd explain later. Back at her place, she revealed the contents. My birth certificate, social security card, and other vital documents, plus my parents' emergency credit card. "They owe you for years of free babysitting," she said. I protested. "We can't use their card, that's stealing." She rolled her eyes. "We're not splurging, but you need work clothes, a phone plan, and essentials." With only $50 to my name and my first paycheck 2 weeks away, I reluctantly agreed, but only for necessities. We spent about $200 on work uniforms, a prepaid phone, and toiletries. I still felt guilty, despite Susan's insistence that it was a fraction of what a real babysitter would have cost them. My first shift at the Daily Grind coffee shop was nerve-wracking, but exciting. The manager, James, was patient despite my mistakes with orders and the espresso machine. After work, I found 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Hesitant, I called back, fearing it was my parents. It was my 10-year-old sister, Emma, using my brother's iPad. She was crying, asking why I left and when I'd return. My heart broke. I explained I got a job and had to move closer to it, assuring her I loved her and my siblings. She didn't fully understand, but made me promise to visit soon. I did, unsure how I'd manage it. That call left me shattered. Susan suggested pizza and silly movies to cheer me up, which helped a little, but I couldn't stop thinking about my siblings. Life settled into a routine. Work, school, homework, repeat. Exhausted from juggling both, I was relieved to be earning money. Aunt Julia invited me to a Sunday dinner with my grandparents and other relatives. I worried it was a trap, but Susan thought seeing supportive family would help. At Aunt Julia's, my grandma hugged me tightly, both of us crying. The dinner was warm, with no pressure to discuss my parents. My grandpa slipped me an envelope with $500 to help me get settled. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. I used some to get my own phone plan and opened a bank account, as Susan advised. 2 weeks later, Susan looked serious when I got home from school. "Your mom called. They noticed the credit card charges." Nausea hit me. I should have known they'd check. My mom accused us of theft, threatening legal action unless we repaid every cent. "And they want you back," Susan added. Stunned, I asked why. "Their new babysitter quit after a week. 4 kids under 10 is too much." I laughed bitterly. Of course they didn't miss me, they missed free childcare. "I'm not going back," I said firmly. "I'll repay the card, but I'm done being their servant." Susan nodded, relieved, but warned they mentioned small claims court. Panic set in. Could they really sue us? I had most of Grandpa's $500 and could repay them, but the situation left me uneasy. At school, I was a wreck, fearing police would arrest me for fraud. My friend Martha noticed and pulled me aside. I spilled everything. She was appalled, calling it child neglect. Her mom, a lawyer, could advise me, she said. Reluctantly, I went to her house after school. Mrs. Thompson listened carefully. then explained my parents were legally obligated to support me until 18. They couldn't just kick me out. She outlined options: emancipation, reporting them to CPS, or having a relative apply for temporary guardianship. Emancipation felt overwhelming, and CPS might remove my siblings, which I didn't want. Guardianship with Susan or my grandparents seemed better. I thanked her and promised to consider it. On my way back, my youngest brother, Alex, texted from my dad's old phone. He said the house was chaotic, with my parents fighting constantly. My heart ached for him. At Susan's, my grandparents were waiting with serious expressions. I feared bad news, but they just wanted to discuss my future. They'd heard about the credit card but weren't angry, just concerned. They proposed I live with them until graduation, so I could focus on school instead of working so much. Their home was 30 minutes from school, and they'd already cleared it with my parents, who agreed as long as I visited weekly for babysitting. It wasn't ideal, but better than daily childcare. I moved in that weekend to a cozy room they'd prepared. My first visit back was tense. My siblings were thrilled, but my parents were distant. My mom cornered me in the kitchen, accusing me of thinking I was too good to live there while accepting my grandparents' help. I stayed calm, saying I was just trying to finish high school without being homeless. She called me dramatic. The day was awkward, but I managed. My mom mentioned repaying the $500 for the card, which I nodded to, avoiding an argument. My grandma later remarked that my parents conveniently forgot the money they saved using me as a nanny for years. Life with my grandparents became stable. I worked fewer shifts, and my grades improved. My English teacher, Mrs. Melissa, praised an essay I wrote and suggested applying for scholarships. She offered to help, sparking hope for college. My grandparents supported me, even taking me on campus tour. My parents, however, scoffed at my college plans, with my dad calling it a waste of money. I ignored him, focusing on applications. By spring, I'd applied to 6 colleges and over a dozen scholarships. In April, I got a half scholarship to State University. Exciting, but not enough. Then, my mom surprised me by asking about my applications without sarcasm, even mentioning Aunt Julia enjoyed State. It felt like a small olive branch. 2 weeks later, I became a finalist for a National Merit Scholarship that could cover full tuition for 4 years. I prepared intensely for the interview, with my grandparents' support. The interview went well, but I was nervous waiting for results. My parents' attitude softened slightly. My mom even said the kids would miss me if I left for college. Finally, I got the email. I'd won the full scholarship. Overjoyed, I celebrated with my grandparents, Susan, Martha, and Mrs. Melissa. I called my mom, who was reserved but not negative, saying, "We'll all miss you." It was the closest she'd come to showing care in years. As graduation neared, my mom proposed a small party at their house with family, including my grandparents and Susan. Shocked, I asked why. She said they were proud of my scholarship and college plans. It felt surreal, but I agreed. At my grandparents', life felt like home. I visited my siblings weekly, and while tension with my parents lingered, they were less hostile. My future, once bleak, now brimmed with possibility, thanks to those who believed in me, and my own realization that I deserved better. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories, get more experiences.